The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Rutland once again, everybody. Today we've come to the very south of the county, and I tell you what, it's extremely picturesque down here. Check this view out. All you can see there is a field, but if I pan the camera around, you can see there's far more than a field. There's loads of hills down here, and because of that, it gives this place quite a bit of a picturesque look to it. I quite like it. Now, there are two villages which we need to complete this one. There's a main village which we'll walk around, but there's also a deserted medieval village which you can find on this very road. It's called Snelston. This is the parish of Caldecott. Caldecott, cold cottages. Today in Rutland we come to the very southern edge of the county. You cannot go any further south here than Caldecott, and if the name is anything to go by, it can get a bit chilly in these parts. Caldecott literally means cold cottages or potentially cold huts. The buildings this refers to would likely have been the small shelters once used by the local shepherds, and that reflects the village's farming and agricultural history. Caldecott has a few more buildings these days, and I'd imagine 99.9% of them have heating. This is a small ironstone village with a collection of vernacular buildings made from local materials. Most of the houses were built using brown ironstone that came from an area between Liddington and Stoke Dry. Others are made from a lighter limestone from Gretton, Harringworth, Weldon and Ketton. Caldecott has a number of examples of striped buildings using both stones. That was a fashion of the 17th century. Most would have originally had thatched roofs of wheat or straw, but not many have those today. Caldecott formed part of the Liddington Manor between the late 16th and 18th centuries, which also encompassed Thorpe by Water, Stoke Dry, and the deserted medieval settlement of Snelston. The remains of that now lost village lie within Caldecott's boundaries, and we'll get a look at it here. This was a thriving village at one time, full of not just farmers but also loads of other tradespeople. It later became an important centre for the distribution of coal thanks to the railway that ran across it in the 1850s. 2 Grand National winning horses were bred here as well. Let's go. Right, so let's see Caldecott as it was in 1900, and not a massive amount has altered since this time, since the village is mainly made up of houses dating from before the turn of the 20th century. The village itself only occupies a small part of the parish boundaries, generally speaking a roughly circular clump on the Eyebrook. Of course, the modern boundaries extend as far as Eyebrook Reservoir, which isn't shown here due to not yet being created. The rest of the parish is all farmland, but at one point there was another village within these boundaries. It was called Snelston, and it was located on the Uppingham road to the north. Note too, there's a railway line here that cuts across the southern edge of Caldecott. That's no longer there since it was lifted in the mid-20th century. Let's get started with the deserted village of Snelston, which used to be on the Uppingham road. It was located sort of here, although these old maps make no mention of it. Neither do modern ones. It's almost a completely forgotten village, but luckily there are still some good earthworks. Snelston was a medieval settlement and was recorded in the Domesday Book. The surviving earthworks aren't massively extensive, but their presence was enough for a team of experts to reconstruct the settlement a few years ago. The schematic they came up with showed that Snelston probably comprised a single street orientated east to west, with houses on either side. Evidence for those can still be seen thanks to old platforms on either side of a sunken holloway. It's known there was a church in Snelston dedicated to St John. For a long time its ancient font could be found in a private garden at a house in Caldecott, but these days it's no longer there. It does still exist allegedly. It was moved to an unknown location somewhere in Northamptonshire. The Uppingham Road didn't exist when Snelston was here. The site of the former village was cut in half by it in the 18th century when the road was built as a turnpike. Snelston was abandoned long before the road came along. It's known a settlement still existed here in 1487 and possibly did so for another 20 or 30 years in some form. However, by the early 16th century it was abandoned completely. The last known record of the village was in 1654 when it was simply referred to as Snelston Field. Let's drive down into Caldecott now using the old turnpike that is Uppingham Road. Caldecott was historically an agricultural and farming village, with most earning their living from crops and livestock. However, this has always been a lively, thriving village in other ways. Records from the 1600s onwards tell us of various trades that took place here. It had tanners, shoemakers, wool combers, textile weavers, carpenters, bakers, butchers and cheesemakers, and that's only a mere handful of what was on offer. There's no wonder then that Caldecott often referred to itself as a town. Several landmarks used the town moniker, such as the town garden, the town pump and the town houses. This has never officially had town status though, it's always been a village. Caldecott is one of 7 villages in the UK with that name. This one is the most southerly village in all of Rutland. You can go no further south than this. It lies almost literally on the Leicestershire border. Let's look at the map again before we go walking. Right then, we've made it to Caldecott and we are beginning our walk on Liddington Road, which will also be our end point. I've got the glasses on because it's quite a bright day today. It's due to rain later, so weirdly I've got my hat and my glasses, but I've also got my raincoat in the car as well. I'm fully prepared today. So let's see what Caldecott can throw at us. There's a lot to talk about in this one. Let's go. Caldecott presents a clustered appearance, but there is a main street running from this corner, where the school used to be, down to a bridge over the Eyebrook, where there's a flour mill. Between the two, an inn is shown, but there's far more that this old map doesn't tell us. On the corner of Main Street, where it becomes Uppingham Road, our first task is to find an old inn, but not the one shown on that map. Caldecott had at least 3 of them. Not marked on that map was the White Hart, previously known as the King's Head. It was located at number 3 Main Street, which is this building here. It doesn't have any visible clues to its past life as a pub. Mind you, there are some reasons for that. Its pub sign is no longer here, thanks to a passing van, which ripped it off in the 1970s, taking a piece of the wall with it. As well as being a pub, the White Hart was also the location of a workshop in the yard beside it. It was there where a Mr. Bradley would make things from wood, like doors. He also made coffins and would literally lay in them himself to test if they were comfortable. Opposite the old inn, we have Caldecott's old school. There is no school in this village today, but when there was, this was it. Located on Main Street, this was designed and built between 1875 and 1878 using stone. The stone used for this school was purchased from a row of unused cottages. They stood on Liddington Road and were demolished to be reused here. The cottages had a name. They were known as the Castle Rag and were bought for £10 each. Bargain. The resulting school was rather unusual. It was to be one of only 2 county schools in the whole of Rutland. That's because nonconformism was so strong in this village that a Church of England school couldn't be agreed to. It was either a board school or nothing. In 1908 it became a council school. It started with 31 children, and by the time it closed in 1977, over 800 local children had been educated here. It temporarily became a nursery school thereafter, run by Miss Glue from Great Eastern. By 1979 though, it was empty. Now we come to the Plough Inn. The history of the old plough goes back several centuries, but not all of it is associated with this building. There are 2 buildings called the Old Plough in Caldecott, but they are one and the same thing. That sounds confusing, but let's explain. This building housed the Plough Inn from 1948 onwards, hence why it has the name. Originally though, it was over the road. Before this became the Plough, it was the post office. Before that, it was the home of the Ward family. The last Ward resident, a Mrs. Lenton Ward, insisted on her death that Mr. Bradley supply her with pillows in order to avoid lying on the bare boards of the coffin he would make for her. Okay, so in front of that building you have one of the greens here in Caldecott. There's actually more than one. We'll talk about these greens later though, because there's still plenty to see on this main road, including the building opposite. If you have a look at this here, this house, that's also the Plough. Let's explain. This house, number 41 Main Street, was the original Plough. It had a load of different purposes. Mainly though, it was either a hostel or a malt house. It ceased trading in 1948 when the licence crossed the road to the other building. Now a house, this is rather unusually oriented with its gable end to the street. It dates from the 17th or early 18th century. It once had a range of farm buildings around its narrow, elongated yard. A date stone indicates that the house was much altered in 1838 to serve as the Plough Inn. At the same time, the farm complex was rebuilt as a range of stables and a coach house with a fine stone front. Although much altered, the buildings provide unusually complete evidence for an early 19th century inn. This next thing concerns the buildings you can find at number 45 Main Street. These once had stables and they were pretty famous. It was here that two former Grand National winning horses were born and bred. Namely, they were Playfair, owned by Ned Baird, trained by Tom Cannon and ridden by George Mawson in 1888, and Fawborough, owned by William Parsonage, trained by Tom Rimmel near Worcester and ridden by Tim Harney in 1932. Caldecott is perhaps not the first place people would think of for the location of horse racing stables, but it makes a bit of sense when you think about it. After the railway had been built in the mid-19th century, all of a sudden Caldecott became a convenient location for horse transport. A railway station's establishment was probably a leading factor in the setting up of these very stables. If there are any folks here in their late 90s, they may tell you they remember Fawborough being walked back to his stable from the station after winning the Grand National. Okay, we've reached a bridge that's controlled by traffic lights, and this bridge is crossing the Eyebrook, which we talked a little bit about yesterday. Here's the brook. Not a lot of water in that at the moment, is there? But it's down there somewhere. Let's talk a bit about this and then about this building that's right next to it. Now we're almost out of civilization because we found our way to the Eyebrook. It may be dammed further upstream at the reservoir, but here the course of the brook is the same as it's been for centuries. This watercourse was vital for the local industry at one time. Some residents refer to the Eyebrook as the Little Eye. This rather innocuous looking stream has been known to flood a few times, but that's actually a good thing. When it does, it leaves behind swathes of alluvial soil, great stuff from a farming perspective. There's no wonder then that given the richness of the soil, farming was the key industry out here for centuries. The valley of the Eyebrook was quite prosperous as a result, and even today has the nickname the Vale of Plenty. Crossing the Eyebrook is something you can do pretty easily these days thanks to a bridge, but historically you had to ford the stream here instead. It was quite muddy, so they say, but not mucky enough to impede travellers. Half a mile further on, you're in Leicestershire, which you can travel to for free these days, but that wasn't always the case. As this is part of the old turnpike, there was a toll gate not far from here where money was collected from users of the road. You simply cannot miss this next landmark, can you? This is the old flour mill, the one we saw on the map. It was powered by water, not surprising really, given the brook is literally right next to this. Today, the building is part of Mill Garage. Milling ceased here in 1910, and for a while afterwards the old mill was used as the village hall. The village has since gained a newer hall, as we'll see later. Sketchy reports suggest that this also used to be a pub called the Sun Inn. There could be some credence to that. You see, originally Caldecott's watermill was situated elsewhere. It was located further down Mill Lane, which runs up the side of this tall, monolithic former flour grinder. Caldecott also once had a windmill located on Mill Lane too. It's up for debate as to which mill the street name refers to. Hopefully by now you've got the idea how compact this village is. Everything is so close together. You've barely got time to walk between landmarks before you're at the next one. Now, next we're going to go up Mill Lane. So this is Mill Lane, but we're not going very far up here because we're going to turn right almost immediately here and head up this road. And down here, we're off to find a house that's got a very interesting name. Let's go find it. So, with the southern parts of the village covered, now it's time to make our way back via the northern bits. This section will see us traverse the village greens before making our way to the church. We'll pass the village hall too, not marked here because it was only built in the 1950s. This property is called Monkey Tree Cottage. It has the absolute honour of overlooking the two village greens in the middle of Caldecott. Until 1932 it was a shop, but today it's a private house. There's another reason why we're at this house though. Look closely at the front of this house and you might see a date stone. It was added in 1774 by William Woodcock, the village blacksmith, who died in the same year. Woodcock's place of work, the blacksmith's shop, was literally next door. The smithy was converted into a congregational chapel in the mid-19th century. Did you spot it on the map a moment ago? If you did, well done. You can't see it anymore physically though. It no longer stands because it closed in around 1920 and was subsequently demolished. The building was erected in 1858 and it had a plethora of uses. Originally it was a wool comber's shed where workers combed down hanging fleeces with spiked gloves. It then became a stays factory for Moore's corsets before that firm eventually moved to Great Eastern. In 1939, the building was used as the HQ of the Home Guard. In 1958, it started to be demolished when the roof was removed, although one gable end remained until the 1960s when demolition was completed. Now we're on the greens, the absolute dead centre of Caldecott village. Aren't these just wonderful? I do love a good village green, and I reckon Caldecotts are up there with the best we've encountered so far in Rutland. There used to be 2 crosses here, one on each green. In the early 20th century, a week-long festival would take place on the greens from around the 19th of September every year. It was called Feast Week, and it was quite a big deal. It took over not just the greens, but also the yard at the plough. Its marquee event was a feast held on the Sunday. Feast Week saw copious amounts of food be consumed by the locals. There was roast beef on the Sunday, hash on Monday, and something called thrumity during the rest of the week. Thrumity is apparently boiled wheat and honey. The event petered out in the 1920s, and the last time it was held was in 1931 on a much reduced scale. 1931 was also the last time a travelling fair was seen in Caldecott. That used to be held in a field on the western side of the Eyebrook. They may have both died away, but Caldecott has always tried to be a traditional village when it comes to celebrations. Pancake Day offers one of the longest standing traditions here. Every Shrove Tuesday, beginning in the first half of the 20th century, the pancake bell is rung at 11 AM. As we learned earlier, Caldecott once had 3 pubs. We've seen 2 of them. The third one was sited in this area. It was called the Black Horse Inn and it ceased trading in 1927. It was sold and pulled down in 1935, and today another building stands on the site of its old yard. That would be the village hall. You see what I mean about everything being scrunched together? You can still see the greens here, and I'm now outside the village hall. I've walked all of about 50 yards. That tells you something, doesn't it? So let's discuss the village hall then next. And this has got quite a tale to tell. What do you think this was in a previous life? Let's find out. This was built in 1955, and what it's made of has its own little story to tell. This was constructed from the same building material that was used to build a series of semi-detached bungalows for the workers of a company called Stewarts and Lloyds. They were the firm that built the dam at Eyebrook Reservoir. The bungalows were only temporary accommodation, and so when the reservoir was completed, they were dismantled. Caldecott now preserves part of that history thanks to this. The village hall provides everyone with an excellent meeting point now, but Caldecott has always had a really good community. Old photographs show village events dating back to the late 1870s, and records prove there were several societies and groups here. Caldecott had a cricket club in 1879, a country dance team in 1908 and 1927, a choral society in the 1920s, and a concert party that was formed in 1931, beginning with small plays and progressing to operas. In 1947, the group performed at Oakham Castle, and in 1951 they did the same for the Festival of Britain. Sport was something Caldecott did well too. For many years it had a tennis club which was based in a field opposite the church beginning in 1936. In the 1950s there was a football club too, as well as a men's whist team. So here we have the church, and it's dedicated to St John the Evangelist. It dates from the 12th century, although you can see some Norman fabric in this one that remains in the form of a small window in the chancel's south wall. As well as the chancel, it has a south porch, a west tower with a spire, a clerestoried nave, a south aisle, and an organ chamber. Expansion is definitely something this building is no stranger to. Several bits of this date from various different times. In the 13th century, the south aisle and the arcade were added. The tower and spire date from the end of the 14th century, and the clerestory dates from the 15th century. The font is ancient, and although it's been altered a few times, it's 13th century date-wise. The church underwent a major restoration in 1865 when the chancel was rebuilt, but it still retains most of its ancient features. The tower is of 3 stages, marked by string courses and some large buttresses, terminating in an embattled parapet with grotesque gargoyles at each angle. The spire was struck by lightning on the 30th of July 1797 and had to be rebuilt using Weldon stone. 1.5 yards of the original spire was destroyed and fell off the tower. Near the entrance to the church is a small lump of stone. That is part of the original spire. Inside this one you'll find a war memorial reminding us of the Caldecott men who gave their lives in World War I. Most of that is all pretty standard stuff, I'm sure you'll agree. However, this church was, until the 1865 restoration, hiding a pretty big secret. Well, I met the church warden there in the churchyard. I would have gone in the church with her, but I always feel a little bit awkward if I'm in the church with somebody else. So I tend to only go in if there's nobody there. So that's why I didn't go inside the church. Anyway, we are through the churchyard now, out onto the road again, which is very noisy. Have you noticed that? Caldecott is quite a loud village because of this road running through it. So we're going to make our way now down towards the park, and that will be the end of the episode pretty much, or the end of the walk, should I say. It's not the end of the episode. We need to discuss the Romans though while we do this, because I couldn't fit this in anywhere else. When the chancel was rebuilt, several Roman tiles were found where the current one now stands. Those tiles were the first piece of evidence found relating to Caldecott's former Roman camp, and it was a big one. There is now ample proof that a Roman camp was located in Caldecott. So far though, the name of this once Roman stronghold is hidden in obscurity. Its size though is well documented. It's believed it stretched across the footprint of almost the entire modern village. Historians reckon the camp extended from the angle of the White Hart's Orchard wall across to the close where the old windmill once stood. It also stretched as far south as the old railway line, which we'll see at the end of this video. There may be lots of evidence that it existed, but so little is actually known about it. You can think of it therefore as a mystery yet to be solved. Its existence proves that the site of Caldecott village has seen human activity for more than 1,000 years. It's always been an important location. The last section of this walk takes us to Pinfold Park. This is the local recreation ground, a tidy little area designed to keep all the young ones in Caldecott happy, and it does that rather nicely. How it gets the name Pinfold Park is rather obvious. Caldecott still has its old pinfold, fully intact right next to the park itself. Once occupied, of course, by stray animals, today the pinfold provides the village with a lovely little rest area, thanks mainly to the bench you can see here. For the Festival of Britain in 1951, the Women's Institute cleared the pinfold area and turned it into a wayside garden, installing a teak bench and holding a celebration for residents. The pinfold was then repaired in 2022 by the parish council. Oh, and we cannot complete this walk without a mention of the allotments that are literally right next to this. If I left these out, the fans would lynch me. So here you go, you lot can be happy for another day. Okay, so we finished our walk around Caldecott, and that's effectively that. However, there is something else I want to include in this episode, because even though everything I've shown you here is within Caldecott and therefore within Rutland, there is something over the county border that I think belongs in this episode. So we're going to take the car over the bridge, through the traffic lighted bridge over the Eyebrook, and check that out to finish. Now, just before we drive away from this one, we have one last thing I want to highlight. The thing is, though, that this last landmark isn't actually in Caldecott. It's not even in Rutland. Just over the border is the site of a former railway station, Rockingham. The railway came to the village in the 1830s. Rockingham Station was located where this now stands, the Castle Restaurant. The station opened in 1850, and it had an important role for the import and export of local goods. It dealt a lot with imported Welsh slate and softwood, both of which were used in the local buildings. Seeing as Caldecott provided access over the River Welland thanks to a bridge, the railway allowed it to become a centre for the distribution of other materials, such as coal. The railway certainly changed the village in the mid-19th century. All of a sudden, there were brand new employment opportunities for people, alongside the traditional agriculture and trades. So why wasn't the station named after Caldecott, even though it was so close to it? Well, you see, at that time, Rockingham, which is around 1 mile further away from the station site, was deemed to be a more important village. It's actually smaller than Caldecott, but the defining feature of it is Rockingham Castle. Apparently, that gave Rockingham a bit more pulling power. As you can see, the station isn't here anymore, and neither is the line. It was the Rugby and Stamford branch line, which has now been lifted. Rockingham Station closed in 1966, but the route of the line and the former coal sheds are still clearly visible. And that's it for this little trip into Rutland, folks. This is the last time we'll be in Rutland this year. I'll be back in 2026. We've still got 36 to go, and there are some fabulous places still to explore, including both of the towns in this county. Join me next year for more in Rutland. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.